You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I am here. Wow. What a beautiful sentiment to be here now, as our good friend Ramdas said. Well, thank you again for welcoming me into your space here this morning. And I want to take some time to talk about love and friendship. I'm sure you're all familiar with the 12 powers. Love is one of those 12 powers, and this month that is our theme, love and friendship. So that's what I'm going to talk about this morning. And the title of my talk is Falling in Love with Life Today. Falling in love with life today. Charles Fillmore said, I'm going to read this so I don't get it wrong. The rushing, jostling life of today often forgets love. Let us remember love. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do today. Today we're going to spend this hour together, this whatever that time is, and I'm a talker, so cut me off. I said hour, like, but we're going to spend that time remembering love. We're going to explore what it means to love. We're going to talk a little bit about what it means to fall in love with life. When I said that's the theme of the talk, what does that mean, falling in love with life? We're going to talk a little bit about what the nature of love is. And we're going to talk about maybe what's most important, especially these days, and maybe it's always been this way. How do we bring more love into the world? I was just reflecting on I guess about 2 weeks ago, earlier this month, we lost an amazing songwriter, Burt Bacharach. And he and Hal David wrote the lyrics, and Burt Bacharach wrote the music to a song that's kind of relevant to this talk. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. And I think the next part of what they said together is maybe what's most important. Not just for some, but for everyone, right? That's a little bit of what we're going to talk about also. How can we extend this love, not just to our friends and family and the people that we think of as people we love, but to everyone. So first, let's just talk for a moment about what it means to love. I also, wow, the timing of this, Valentine's Day was last week, and I think we all have a sense of what we think about with Valentine's. Valentine's is usually when we take that 1 year out of our busy years to celebrate that someone special. If there is someone special, that someone special in our lives that we can profess our love to, and we try to find the perfect card and maybe the perfect flowers and think of the perfect plans and hope they all go well, so that we can celebrate that one special love that we might have in our lives. But I think that, if we reflect on that concept of love, it's fairly narrow. It's really, I think that expression of love is limited to the people that we feel a certain way about. We make them someone special and they become our Valentine. But that's a love that's really reserved for some and not others, and that's not what we're really talking about today. I think Jesus set the bar really high for us when he said, love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. So I guess, depending on who your neighbor is, that's either an easy thing to do or a very challenging thing to do. So I think it's probably worthwhile thinking a little bit about what Jesus might have meant when he said neighbor. I think for me, it's relative. If we think about the incredibly expansive universe that's out there, and then we think about this tiny little globe that we're floating around on and spinning around on, everyone on this planet is our neighbor. It's not about the person living next to us or across the street. It's about the people living everywhere. People we may know, most people we've never met and will never meet. They're all our neighbors on this planet and this life experience together. So Jesus, again, has set the bar high for us, asking us to love our neighbors, all of them, without exception. How do we do that? How do we do that? Something to strive for. Something we're very grateful we have a Wayshore. to kind of help shine some light on that path and what that can look like. So I guess in essence, Jesus has asked us to give a Valentine to every person on the planet. I have some thoughts about that. This was the Valentine I received this year. How beautiful, right? Aww. To the man I love with all my heart. Love it. I won't read the whole thing, but one of the lines in the inside says, I love what we have together and I love you. Aww. I'm gonna get sentimental. But what about when Jesus reminds us that our task in this life experience is to love every single person without exception? The inside of that Valentine card might say something like, I don't love everything you do. I don't appreciate all of the words that come out of your mouth. Most of the time, I don't even agree with you. But, and this is what it's all about. Nevertheless, I love you with all my heart. How do we do that? How do we do that? How do we live up to that Valentine's Day card? Well, how many of us can say we can do that? Struggling. It's a struggle. Striving, right? It's a work in practice. That's what this life is all about. That's why we're here, to have that opportunity to practice that. It doesn't happen automatically, especially with the conditioning that we've received. We're taught that there are rules to love, right? There are rules, whether it's a parent-child relationship or an intimate relationship with a partner or even friend relationship. There are rules to that. And if the rules are broken, we withhold love. That's, wow. Can you imagine withholding love from anyone? For any reason? When love is what we're all seeking, and love is the essence of who we are, love is like air or water. Why would we withhold that from anyone, for any reason? So when we think about that concept of love being maybe a set of rules that people, or expectations, right, that people meet or they don't, and when they don't, we withhold love, is that love? Is that love? I mentioned at the beginning of this talk that the title of the talk is Falling in Love with Life Today. So life, wow, what does life include? Everything. That's no small task. It means all the people on the planet, as we've been talking about, but it also means everything that happens in this life experience. How do we fall in love with things that are tragic? How do we fall in love with, whether it's in a relationship, maybe a friend or a lover betrays us, maybe a parent who wasn't there in the ways that we expected them to be, or we thought parents were supposed to be, or we needed them to be? How do we fall in love with illness? How do we fall in love with injury or the loss of a loved one? Maybe it's a tragic loss that comes at an unexpected time of life. How do we love that? I think to do that, we need to cultivate a new understanding of what love is and what it even means to love. So let's talk for a minute about the nature of love. It's interesting because one of the questions that I get when I've talked about love before, one of the questions that comes up is, what is love? It's so interesting because I think we all have a sense of what we think it is, but that question still comes up. We're still searching on what is love? What is that anyway? When we talk about love, what is that? And I think we all have ideas about what it means to love someone. We know that feeling, right? That feeling is familiar to us. We know what it feels like to love a parent or a child or a friend or a spouse or a lover. But I guess the question that I have is that love? Is love a feeling? Is love a feeling? Feelings come and go, right? Feelings change with circumstances. Is that love? Jesus tells us that God is love, and I saw that displayed here. When I walked in, I thought, I'm home. God is love. Does God change with the changing circumstances? Does God come and go? Is God part of us, within us, always, no matter what? That's love. That nurturing, that support, that guidance, that care is constant presence within us and within everyone else. That seems to me to be a different understanding of love. It's a much more expansive understanding of love. It's not a feeling. It's not about a feeling. It's not about rules. You either live up to what I expect or I don't love you anymore. It's not that. It is infinite and unwavering, constant, always, always present, no matter what we do with our lives. That love will resurrect, recreate, support, nurture, guide. That's love. So that's the love that we're working. That's our practice. That's what the love that we're working to embody in our own lives, is to live up to that. So, if love isn't a feeling, then what does it mean, again, for us to love someone? Love is pure presence, like we were experiencing, I hope, in our meditation this morning. Pure presence, pure consciousness. What does that mean? Pure presence. I love that. That I grasp of that understanding of pure presence. Pure means in its unadulterated state, so to speak. Before we start layering on our beliefs, our expectations, how things should or shouldn't be, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, all that stuff muddies the waters of pure being, pure consciousness, before all that other stuff enters into it. And if we can get to that state, we can discover that love is unconditional. The conditions we put on love, we're no longer talking about love. It just doesn't work that way. Thank God we had Jesus and others to show us, to talk to us, to bring awareness to that understanding that love is us, within us all, and it is unconditional. No matter what happens, that love never leaves, never wavers. We don't rein it in or dole it out. It's always there. Does that mean that we have to like everything that happens, or we have to approve of everything that happens, or approve of everything that everyone does? No, love, this is where the confusion can come in. Love is not the same as approval. It has nothing to do with it. Whether we approve or not, we love. Same thing with acceptance. Sometimes we feel like, well, I can't accept that. That's unacceptable. Maybe it is. But that doesn't mean we withdraw our love. Love is what is needed. Love, when a situation is unacceptable, that situation is calling for love more than anything else, right? So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, because sometimes it can be confusing. It's like, well, if I love someone who's done this horrendous thing to me, or somebody I love, or somebody else that how can I love them? Well, you don't have to approve of what they've done, but that doesn't mean that we give or take love in that way. It's always there, and we want to find our own unique ways in each circumstance to express that connection. Love is connection, right? Love is care, and it's feeling that oneness that we all share. That doesn't go away, and love is nurturing. Charles Fillmore said, I think this is a very beautiful way of capturing that. He said, love is the pure essence of being that binds together the whole human family. Love is the pure essence of being that binds together the whole human family. The whole human family. Does that mean some people are left out? No. Can we pick and choose who's in our family? No. Do we love everybody? Yes. The whole human family means not a single soul is excluded for any reason. A Course in Miracles, if you've studied that, I know there's a group here, and in fact, we just finished up at another Unity. Our year-long study just ended this past week of Course in Miracles, and it tells us that the opposite of love is fear. The opposite of love is fear. That means if we're not loving, something else is occupying that space in our hearts, in our minds, in our relationships, in our life experience, and that's fear. The flip side of that, Course in Miracles also says, fear arises from a lack of love. So when we inhibit our capacity to love, we create a vacuum that's going to be filled in with fear. Fear will rush in to take its place if we're not vigilant. But good news is, perfect love casts out fear. Course in Miracles also tells us that. So when we do invite that unconditional, that pure love to well up in us, there's no room for fear. There's no room for fear. I want to take a minute to talk a little, very briefly, about a couple of experiences of how I've learned to love in my life. Another quote that comes to mind, Eckhart Tolle tells us that to love is to recognize yourself in another. To love is to recognize yourself in another. And what that tells me is that if I'm really able to do that, if I can recognize myself in you, and you can recognize yourself in me, the subtext there is, there really is no you and me. There's just us. There's this oneness that we share, and we're seeing that in each other. So when we recognize ourselves in someone else, and they do the same, what we're really recognizing is that there is no me and you, there's no us and them, there's no separation. That's just part of the illusion. We can see past that. So I want to give an example of my oldest brother. He's just a few years older than I am, and gosh, sad to think about. We spent decades not really communicating. We did the usual, family get-togethers, very friendly, super nice guy. Love my brother. He's an extremely nice person. But he is a minister, and he's an evangelical minister, and he interprets the Bible literally. So for me, in my life as a gay person, my husband Dennis is here, there wasn't really a place for me in his belief system. Well, there was a place, it just wasn't a very good place. It was a little warm for my taste. Sorry, Rob. Kind of a long stay in a warm place, right? So it was very difficult for me to have a relationship with him because I felt condemned. I felt unaccepted. I felt judged. And I thought for so many years, I won't tell you how many, because hopefully I look younger than I am. For so many years I thought, that was on him. Can't you just change the way you think and what you believe? Can't you accept me? I'm your brother. And so I spent so many years waiting and expecting and hoping that he would change, that he would come to a new understanding, an expanded understanding of this whole human experience and what it means to love. And it didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, the world is very clever this way. I've come to realize, maybe Byron Katie talks about this, that so much of what is true is the flip. It's the exact flip of what I thought was true. Mm-hmm. And when I really look at things very differently from the opposite direction, I can recognize truth where I never thought it was. I've realized this world is pretty upside down. So I've gotten used to flipping it. It's like, oh, that's what I think? it's probably the opposite is true. So I realized in this moment of clarity, and it was an emotional moment, that everything that I was expecting of my brother, everything I accused him of doing, I was doing myself. I was judging. I was not accepting. I was wanting him to change his beliefs and how he was. All of a sudden it became incredibly clear to me, that's me. I'm doing that. I'm the one. I'm the one who's not being accepting here. I'm the one who's not being loving. And all of a sudden, all the rest dropped away. Did it change how he thinks and believes? No. Did I expect it to? No. Did it matter anymore? No. All that was left when that building, what I had constructed came down, all that was left was love. And I just felt such tremendous love for him. And I had a similar but different relationship, but an experience with an intimate relationship. And I want to share this also because it's kind of a different way of thinking about this. It was an intimate partner, and I felt, without getting into a lot of details or anything like that, I felt deceived, I felt lied to, I felt betrayed. I was so angry. I felt manipulated. I felt that the trust that I thought was there had been a lie. And so, in a very angry outburst, ended the relationship. And it wasn't until years later when I realized it wasn't love that I thought that I felt. It was expectations for how I thought this relationship was supposed to be. And how I thought this person was supposed to be, and who I thought they were supposed to be, and how I thought they were supposed to act, and what they were supposed to say and do. That's all me. That's all me. It wasn't really about love. Certainly wasn't unconditional love. Did it mean I needed to stay in the relationship? No. Did it mean I needed to acknowledge that this person was who he was? And whatever the circumstances, I could bring love to that situation? And so that was a huge insight for me. Same thing, reconnected. Maybe this is 10 or 15 years later. And I just told him, I love you so much. It had nothing to do with whether I agreed with how he chose to live his life or how he chose to behave. That wasn't important. It was getting back to that underlying essence that we all share. That's love. And wow, that's so powerful if we can set aside our expectations. So, falling in love with life is falling in love with everything, every person in it, every circumstance. The only way to get there is by releasing all of those other expectations and beliefs about how things are supposed to be. So I want to close with an invitation that I have for you. Not just this morning, but as we leave here today and the week ahead, at least, maybe longer. I want to invite you to, as Charles Fillmore said, to remember love. Really reflect on that. Remember love. I invite you to practice love. It doesn't seem like something we should have to practice, right? We think, I've been doing that my whole life, but you know what? We've probably been practicing the wrong song. So
it's completely the opposite.
So that requires, at this point, some practice. Let's not set the bar too high for ourselves. Allow ourselves to trip, fall, make mistakes. But this is a practice. We're practicing in our relationships. We're practicing in everything we encounter. How can I unleash, bring to this situation the love that is me? I invite you to challenge yourself to love all your neighbors. Don't pick and choose. This is where the challenge is, to love all our neighbors.
There it is.
I invite you to recognize yourself in another. And most importantly, I invite you to allow love to permeate yourself. Let it fill you up, every cell of your body. Where you have judgments, or you might have judgments that you're unworthy, I wish I hadn't done this, or that was such an awful thing I did, or I made mistakes. Let all that go. Let all that go. Tap into that wellspring of love that is your true nature. It's the essence of who you are. It's the essence of who we all are. And I want to close with something else that Jesus said. He said, whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. So I invite you to know God. Not the God out there somewhere, but the God here. The God here that lives in here in each of us. Thank you so much.
Wow.